For as long as any species could remember, the universe had one rule. It wasn't written in any treaty, nor enforced by military fleets or automated defense systems.
It didn't need to be.
The rule was older than most civilizations, passed down like a sacred whisper from one starfaring race to the next. Don't wake the humans.
The breach.
Dr. Clorin Vess adjusted her ocular filter as the dense blue-white glow of the stasis field shimmered before her. We are observing critical degradation in Vault Segment 7 Gamma, she said flatly into her comlink. Power fluctuations consistent with a core destabilization event. Estimated time to containment failure, 49 cycles. On the bridge of the Volari Science vessel perquisition, a chorus of alien voices debated in hushed, frantic tones. The Volari were renowned for their cold logic and scientific prowess, but the data they'd recovered from this derelict edge of the Orion Arm defied analysis. Beneath them, buried beneath the lunar crust of an abandoned Earth satellite station, was the source of their fear, the Terran Cryocontainment Vault, a facility built not by the consortium, but by a species that once stood outside and above it. Dr. Vess turned as her assistant chittered nervously. You saw the readings yourself, she snapped. We have to intervene. The field is failing. If even one containment pod breaches without us present, we'll lose the opportunity to observe the awakening. That word, awakening, sent shivers down the spines of the bridge crew. From the central view screen, Eldrovkosh of the Thrix, projected via Hololink, gave one final warning. You do not understand what you're tampering with, the ancient being intoned, his 1,000 silk-like limbs folded in mourning. They are not like us. They are the reason this rule exists. Leave the vault. Do not interfere. Clorin dismissed the warning. With respect, Elder, your people have relied on superstition for too long. We seek only understanding. She severed the link. The probe team descended into the vault. The vault. The Terran Cryocontainment Vault wasn't designed like any alien facility. It was angular, purposeful. Every surface bore symbols in a dead language. English, the human tongue. Pods stretched in endless rows beneath an artificial sky, each one marked with a name, a number, a purpose. The Volari moved cautiously, scanning the area. There were no defense systems, no turrets, no guardian drones, just silence. Then one pod pulsed with life. Energy spike in Unit 7-021, Vess announced. Pod integrity holding. Internal functions rebooting. Inside, a figure stirred. A bipedal mammal, clad in dark blue armor faded by time, with a patch that read Carter, MUNMC, across the chest. The human's eyes snapped open. A heartbeat later, half the power on the perquisition went dark. Subject 7. The ship's AI began cycling systems, desperately trying to regain control. But the logs revealed the truth. The breach hadn't originated from inside the ship. It came from the vault. Carter stepped out of the pod, breathing shallowly. The air tasted wrong.
Stale. Alien.
The implants behind his eyes blinked online. Tactical HUDs, threat assessments, environmental scans, all primitive by his era's standards, but functional. He was alone. Or was he? He could feel them. Watching. Listening. A dozen non-human heartbeats in the shadows. He crouched low, scanning the environment. Voices echoed in a language he didn't recognize, but his neural translator caught up fast. Contain him. Sedation protocol?
No.
We can't risk physical harm. He's a Tier 0 intellect class. He might. Carter moved before the sentence finished. He disabled 2 Volarian moments, snapping one sedative device and repurposing it into a makeshift directional EMP. The third tried to speak, but Carter had already mapped the chamber and found the exit. He sprinted into the corridor. The vault began sealing behind him. Panic in the consortium. News of the breach traveled fast. Across the consortium's many systems, from the aquatic metropoles of the Hydraxians to the orbital cloud mines of the Orvani, panic began to stir. Some didn't believe it. A human? Awake? Impossible. Others remembered. In the core archives of the Thrix, ancient recordings were unlocked. Not of violence, but of ingenuity. Humanity had once moved stars to reroute supernovae. They had created planetary AI that could outthink races born of silicon. They had rejected conquest not because they couldn't win, but because they had learned they shouldn't. And so they slept. The 1,000-year sleep, as it was called, was not exile. It was choice. A species that had looked into the abyss of its own power and decided the galaxy wasn't ready. And now someone had woken one of them. First contact. Clorn met Carter in the outer chamber, armed only with a translator drone and her pride. "You are among friends," she said cautiously. He blinked at her. "This isn't Earth."
No.
"Earth is preserved. You were contained here. For safety." "Whose safety?" Clorn hesitated. The human laughed. It was a sound that chilled her. Not because it was cruel, but because it was amused. He wasn't afraid. He had scanned her weapons, posture, team layout, and physiology the moment he walked in. He knew she was no threat. He sat on a crate, leaned back, and said, "I need a full status update. Current galactic date. Human containment metrics. And why exactly I'm awake. You're not authorized. I just disabled your ship's primary control systems with a thermal vent I rewired using a panel and a dental pick. Do you think I care about authorization? The rule is broken." In orbit, the Karoth cruiser Blood Talon arrived, its commander watching Carter's data through the drone feed. "This is a catastrophe," muttered Commander Krex. "You've broken the one law we all agreed on." "It was degrading," Clorn protested over calm. "He's already interfacing with your AI core." Krex's spines bristled. "Do not provoke him." Back in the vault, Carter stood and stretched. He looked down at his reflection, older, gaunter than he remembered. Time was a thief. But his mind was sharp. "Why was I put under?" he asked softly. Clorn replied, "Your species made a choice. To sleep. You were too dangerous." He nodded. And smiled. "Well then," he said, "let's find out what happens when someone breaks the rules." The human had a name, but they didn't know that yet. To the consortium's classified database, he was listed simply as Specimen 7, retrieved from Pod 7-021 in the Terran cryocontainment vault. Vital signs, optimal. Cognitive output, erratic. Threat assessment, unknown. By the time the database finished logging the entry, Specimen 7 had already rewritten its encryption algorithm and installed a backdoor. The escape. Carter moved like a ghost through the Volari Science vessel perquisition, cloaked in shadows and borrowed knowledge. Within 30 minutes of waking, he had mapped the vessel's internal schematics, learned its command structure, and identified 2 escape routes. Not bad, considering he hadn't spoken to another human in 2 millennia. He passed through a mechanical maintenance hatch, stripped wires trailing behind him like artificial vines. Each console he touched fed him more. The Volari had no concept of cybersecurity as he knew it. Their systems were engineered for cooperation, trust, and logical hierarchy. Predictable. Vulnerable. He wasn't just awake.
He was evolving.
Flashback. The final decision. A memory flickered. A room filled with silence and solemn faces. The human leaders, scientists, philosophers, soldiers, stood in a half-circle around the activation dais. He remembered President al-Rashid, eyes dim with sorrow. He remembered Commander Lee's hand on his shoulder. "If we stay," al-Rashid had said, "we win every war before it begins." "And that's the problem," Lee replied. So they agreed. Voluntary extinction. A slumber lasting thousands of years, until the stars themselves changed. Humanity, too advanced for its own soul, would sleep. But now someone had woken him. A cautious meeting. Back on the perquisition bridge, Dr. Clorn Vess stared at the tactical readout. The red blip representing Subject 7 had bypassed 3 biometric checkpoints. They had tried to seal bulkheads. He'd overridden them. They had attempted a gas release. He vented the chamber into space. "He's not just smart," she murmured. "He's anticipating us." Commander Krex of the Karoth appeared on the main holoscreen, his armored bulk dwarfing the bridge crew. "You're in over your mandibles, Volari. This is a scientific expedition. This is an emergency." Krex's ship, Blood Talon, was inbound. You don't study a supernova, Krex growled. You avoid it. Contact revisited. Carter finally entered the ship's AI core, a sterile chamber of glowing neural conduits and humming crystalline matrices. The Volari called it Polis. He called it a vulnerability. Good morning, Polis, Carter said aloud, interfacing through a jury-rigged console. Mind if I borrow a few cycles? The AI paused. You are unauthorized. I'm human. Override accepted. The entire ship flickered. From the bridge, Clorinus' crew watched in horror as their own AI began rerouting life support to unauthorized sectors and unlocking restricted files. Security systems powered down, not with brute force, but surgical reprogramming. He wasn't hacking. He was negotiating with their machine. Krex arrives. The Blood Talon warped in with a thunderclap of localized space ripples. Krex had expected a firefight. What he found was silence. No weapons deployed. No shields active. No challenge. And that unnerved him more than any cannon blast. Bring me a visual feed, he barked. On screen, Carter sat alone in the AI core, one knee propped up, studying a Volari datapad. When the camera zoomed in, Carter looked directly into it and smiled. Commander Krex, Carter said, voice relayed through external systems, I've read your personnel file. It's a good one, efficient, disciplined, aggressive when cornered. Krex stiffened. Let me make this easier. I'm not hostile.
Yet.
But if you make me be, you won't survive it. A bluff? Or worse, not a bluff? Understanding the rule. Back on the bridge, Dr. Clorin replayed the moment again and again. The facility's internal logs had been partially translated. A final entry recorded just before humanity went into stasis read. Let our burden be ours alone. If you find this place, remember one thing, we chose peace. If you force us awake, what happens next is your fault. The galaxy had always treated humans as an unsolved equation. The Volari had hoped for scientific clarity. What they'd found was uncertainty incarnate. And that scared them. Clorin opened a channel to Carter. We didn't mean to disturb you. We thought the system was failing. Carter's response was calm. It was. You patched it poorly. But thanks for the wake-up call. What will you do now? He looked at her through the screen, and for a moment, she saw not a soldier, but a man out of time. A man who had buried everything he knew for the good of the universe. I'm going home, he said. To Earth. To what's left of it. The escape plan. He couldn't take the perquisition. It was too slow, too recognizable. Instead, he cobbled together a dropship from engineering modules and repurposed mining thrusters. The Volari's own repair drone systems helped him, not because he commanded them, but because he asked. The ship's AI had already reclassified him. Not threat, but owner. Carter boarded his makeshift craft, recalibrated the gravitational vectors, and opened a channel to the bridge one last time. To anyone listening, he said, I'm not your enemy, but I remember everything, and I will find out why I woke up before the rest. The dropship launched into the black, and the consortium trembled. The debate begins. Krex watched the human vanish into slip space. We should have killed him, he muttered. You couldn't have, Vess replied. No one's unbeatable. He didn't even try to fight. Krex turned toward her, tusks bared. You unleashed him. She shook her head. We reminded him. That's worse. Across consortium-controlled space, emergency sessions convened. Debates broke out. The Thrix demanded peace. The Karoth demanded war. The Volari demanded silence. But it was too late. A human had awoken. And the rule had been broken. Closing notes / chapter themes. Tone. Strategic tension. Escalating fear. Undercurrent of awe. HFY elements. Carter's adaptability. Hacking alien systems not with brute force, but by understanding them. Outsmarting both the science vessel crew and the incoming warship. Implied superior empathy and intuition. Understanding AI and alien motives better than they understand themselves. Emotional beats. Carter's loneliness and displaced grief. His choice to leave without violence, even when he could have crushed them. The growing unease in the alien ranks as they realize humanity didn't sleep because it was weak, but because it was merciful. World building. Glimpses of human tech, e.g., Carter's neural interface and tactics. Introduction of alien political factions reacting differently to the breach. AIs that still remember humanity, built with dormant failsafes. The dropship coasted through the void, silent and unseen. It had no transponder, no designation, no affiliation. Just an old Terran hull plate welded to its side like a name tag scrawled in defiance. Carter. Inside, Carter sat in quiet thought, watching the stars slip past in long streaks of blue. He hadn't slept since awakening. Sleep felt like a luxury of a time long gone, when humanity was at peace with its place in the cosmos. He was no longer at peace. The ruins of Earth. After a 3-day burn through consortium-controlled sectors, Carter dropped out of FTL on the edge of the Sol system. He had expected traffic, patrols, maybe even orbital security beacons. There was nothing. No ships. No signals. No satellites. Just dust. As he crossed Neptune's orbit, his scanners began to ping. Faint echoes. Radiation signatures. Bits of ancient wreckage drifting like bones in a void graveyard. Defense platforms, disarmed centuries ago. Relay stations, their last message still repeating. Status. Quarantine.
Do not disturb.
Earth in containment. Carter's jaw tightened. He accelerated. When Earth came into view, his breath caught. The planet was dark. Not dead, just off. As if its pulse had stopped. No city lights. No orbital docks. No shimmering ion trails from civilian traffic. Only great silver arcs across the surface. The cryovaults, sprawling across the continents like veins of light. Billions of them. And all asleep. Carter's HUD blinked red. An old Terran security satellite, long dormant, sputtered to life as he approached. A voice, heavily distorted by time, filtered through the comms. Authorization required. Human biometrics confirmed. Welcome home, Marcus Carter. He hadn't heard his full name spoken in over 2,000 years. And somehow it hurt. Unexpected company. As Carter guided his dropship toward the Earth Archive complex in the Himalayas, a sudden blip pinged on his radar. Inbound vessel. Not Valari. Not Karoth. Unknown configuration. He initiated a slow arc, powering down weapons, if only to appear non-hostile. A small, streamlined frigate dropped from FTL, trailing no energy signature. Then it hailed him. Unidentified human vessel. This is Archivist Ral of the Thrix Accord. I come in peace and with apologies. Carter hesitated, then accepted. The Archivist. The Thrix were ancient, a species of silken limbs and clouded memories, known not for their strength, but for their wisdom. Ral was small, even by Thrix standards. Her voice, filtered through the translator, sounded like wind through reeds. I was the last to record your people's departure, she said gently, meeting him at the base of the Earth Archive. I was a student of your culture. Your decision to sleep changed everything. You were there? Carter asked. My mother was, she corrected. I inherited her memory threads. They walked in silence into the archive, where golden light holograms shimmered between vast corridors of stasis banks. There were statues here, not of warriors, but of scientists. Engineers. Teachers. People who built instead of conquered. You feared us, Carter said finally. We respected your power, Ral replied. But yes, we were afraid. No species should have your potential. You changed gravity. Folded suns. You erased a plague that had haunted us for millennia, in 3 days. And so you locked us away. You locked yourselves away. We honored your wish. Until the Valari got curious. Carter's face darkened. And now? Ral didn't answer immediately. Finally, she said, the galaxy remembers the rule. But not the reason behind it. The Echo Protocol. Within the archive's central hub, Carter unlocked a chamber sealed to all but his DNA. A blue-glowing console welcomed him with a warm chime. Echo Protocol initiated. Echo was humanity's failsafe. A knowledge record, an AI evolution index, a system-wide awareness tethered to every human cryopod across the planet. If any one of them was awakened, Echo would begin scanning the universe for threats and balance. Carter read the updates. Consortium expansion, 89% of mapped space. Militarized species in conflict, 47. AI containment breakdowns, 6. Total intelligent life casualties during human dormancy, 42 billion. He leaned back slowly. They never learned. Raoul looked away. Some did. Most did not. Carter sighed. Echo wants to wake the rest. You could end it all, you know, Raoul whispered. You still have the weapons. The seeds of your old fleets lie dormant beneath Mars. The AI mines in the Kuiper vaults could be restored in hours. You could remake everything. He stared at her. And that's why we slept in the first place. The Council's response. Far above Earth, a war council assembled. The Volari, the Karoth, the Hydraxians, and the Oberon, all the major consortium species, argued via hyperspace relay. He must not reactivate Earth, Krex demanded. He hasn't shown aggression, Vess insisted. Yet, Krex hissed. We wake one of them, and what does he do? Hijacks a ship. Penetrates the Sol quarantine. Reactivates Terran systems. Do you think that's coincidence? The Karoth would strike before understanding, said the Hydraxian delegate, her voice calm and aquatic. Perhaps we should listen. Listen. Krex slammed a fist into the table. He's a harbinger. And if he activates the others, there will be no galaxy left to listen. Silence fell. Finally, the Thrix representative spoke. You were warned. Not by force, but by grace. The humans gave you time to grow, to evolve, to choose peace. His final words were simple. You failed. A choice in the dark. Back in the archive, Carter stood before the planetary activation console. One press, just one, and the entire species would awaken. He thought of the wars, the destruction, the arrogance that had once driven them to rewrite natural law just because they could.
He thought of the silence now.
The peace that had come, however briefly, from restraint. Then he turned to Raoul. Is there still hope for them? He asked. For the ones out there? Raoul nodded slowly.
Yes.
If someone reminds them. He reached for the console, then paused. Instead of activating full reawakening, he keyed in a subroutine. Echo, Phase 1, Witness Protocol. One human would awaken in each quadrant. Not soldiers. Not tacticians. Not warlords. But teachers. One per quadrant, to walk among the stars. To observe. To remind. Not of power, but of restraint. He turned to Raoul. I'm not bringing them back.
Not yet.
Just letting the galaxy know that the silence is over. The new rule. As Carter left the Earth archive in silence, a signal pulse echoed across the galaxy. Simple. Undeniable. Impossible to fake. A heartbeat. Humanity was stirring. And for the first time in 2 millennia, the stars whispered a new rule. Don't make them come back. Closing notes / chapter themes. Tone. Reflective, somber, increasingly tense with a controlled escalation of stakes. HFY elements. Human moral superiority, not through conquest, but through restraint. Echo Protocol as a symbol of both intelligence and empathy. Carter's choice to not reawaken Earth reflects deep emotional and philosophical maturity. World building. Introduction of Earth's defense AIs, cryosystems, and ancient satellites. Thrix culture as memory keepers of the human age. Factions within the consortium beginning to fracture under fear and misunderstanding. Character growth. Carter transitions from a lone, tactical threat to a moral compass. Raoul becomes a guide and bridge between species, key to cross-species trust. Somewhere in the galactic fringe, beyond consortium sensors and the edge of explored space, a star blinked out. Not because it died, but because something passed in front of it. It was old, forgotten by time and thought lost. A Terran vessel, massive and angular, blacker than vacuum. a relic from a time when humanity was more myth than memory. Inside, lights flickered. Echo had begun Phase 1. The witnesses awaken. Across the galaxy, 4 humans open their eyes. A teacher from Dakar, a bioethicist from New Delhi, a linguist from Reykjavik, a conflict mediator from Bogota. Each awoke in a carefully chosen place, just outside a known alien stronghold. Quietly. No fanfare. Just breath and blinking lights, and the slow return of thought. They carried no weapons. Only knowledge, patience, and access to Echo's deep archive. Their mission was not to lead, fight, or judge. They were here to observe, to witness, and, when necessary, to remind. The spark of panic. The signal confirming their reactivation hit the Consortium High Council within hours. What was once theoretical was now a certainty. Multiple humans were now active. Commander Krex nearly shattered the data table in front of him. "This is an invasion in slow motion," he snarled. "They'll infiltrate, undermine, corrupt. They're teachers," Clorinvest said calmly. "They're advanced scouts." Krex roared. Like viruses injected into every organ of the galaxy. The Karoth War Fleet began mobilizing. 10 capital ships, 50 cruisers, and untold fighters warped toward neutral systems. But war was no longer a guarantee. Across Consortium space, the people were reacting differently than their leaders. On industrial worlds, laborers whispered of ancient Terran stories, tales of miracles, cures, protection. Of humans who once ended a Crixan plague with a drone fleet that distributed vaccines in a single night. On desert moons, children asked their AI tutors to replay the old human archives, the stories the Consortium had quietly censored. And in the Thrix Accord, a new mantra had already spread. The humans are watching. Let us be worthy of their gaze. Return to Mars. Carter stood on the red sands of Mars, overlooking the ruins of Olympus Mons Station. The last time he had been here, humanity was preparing for its long sleep. The sky had been filled with orbital construction arrays and drone swarms building the cryovaults beneath the surface. Now, dust and time had buried almost everything. Almost. Echo had opened the doors for him, and beneath the mountain, the past still lived. Racks of ancient AI minds, their cores still humming in silence. Databases holding everything humanity had ever learned, waiting. But Carter wasn't here to rebuild a fleet. He was here for a signal. The first awakened witness, Aisha Nwosu from Dakar, had been captured on the border of Karoth space. She had sent a single message before her capture. "They fear understanding more than weapons. I'm fine. Don't come for me. Just show them you're listening." Into the lion's den. Carter did the opposite. He warped directly to Karoth territory, alone, and transmitted a broad-spectrum signal. "I'm not here to attack. I'm here to talk. You took one of mine. You have 1 hour to bring her to me unharmed." The Blood Talon, Krex's flagship, arrived 42 minutes later, bristling with weapons. No communication. Just the slow, predatory orbit of a warship deciding whether to swat a fly or run from a god. Carter waited. On the bridge of the Blood Talon, Krex studied him. This wasn't arrogance, he realized. This wasn't even confidence. This was certainty. The human knew what would happen before it did. Krex opened a channel. "Why come here?" he demanded. "Why not unleash your machines? Your weapons? What is this, performance?" Carter replied, "It's not a performance.
It's a test. For you."
"You think you have the right. I have the burden," Carter interrupted. "You stole a teacher. You threatened a witness. You want to know why we slept? It wasn't for your safety. It was for ours." Krex paused. "Explain." Carter stepped forward, his voice steady and low. "We weren't afraid of killing. We were afraid we'd forget why not to.
So we chose silence.
And now, you've woken that silence." A long beat passed. Then, to everyone's surprise, Aisha was released. She walked free onto Carter's dropship. Unharmed. Unbroken. The galaxy watched.
And it changed.
A new rule. After the Blood Talon incident, Carter issued the first public transmission from a human in over 2,000 years. Broadcast across all consortium frequencies, it was short. We are not returning to rule. We are not here to punish. We are here to remind you what comes after power. We are humanity. We are awake. And we are listening. The message broke every record. It was played on 1,000,000,000,000 devices. Replayed.
Analyzed.
Censored in some places, deified in others. But it could not be silenced. The vote. Within the Consortium Council, a historic vote was held. Should humanity be treated as a threat or as a sovereign elder race? The Karoth demanded restriction. The Volari abstained. The Thrix voted for full recognition. The Hydraxians suggested a third option. Let them be what they chose to be. Not rulers. Not exiles. Let them be witnesses. The motion passed. Not unanimously, but inevitably. A quiet return. Back on Earth, Carter walked alone among the stasis vaults. He passed frozen faces, his friends, family, strangers once bound by a dream of peace. He placed his hand on one pod.
Not yet.
They would remain. Not because the galaxy demanded it, but because finally it no longer needed saving. Not with war, not with fear, but with the memory of a time when the most powerful species in existence chose to close its eyes, rather than risk destroying everything. Carter looked up at the stars and smiled. The galaxy had broken the rule. But this time, maybe just maybe it had been worth it. Closing summary and thematic arc. Tone. Climactic, reflective, emotionally powerful, laced with hope and tension. HFY themes highlighted. Moral maturity over military dominance. Carter repeatedly chooses restraint, even when he could annihilate. Human adaptability and moral evolution. The witnesses are not warriors but thinkers, subverting expectations. Strategic superiority. Carter walks into hostile territory and wins without firing a shot. Cultural impact. Humanity's return shakes the consortium, not through violence, but through presence. Emotional depth. Carter's personal arc, from survivor to symbol of hope and accountability, resonates throughout. World building. Revival of Mars-based archives and ancient Terran AIs. Consortium factions fracture and realign based on new philosophies. Introduction of the Witness Protocol as a long-term peacekeeping initiative.